I was loyal, showed up early, stayed late, never missed a deadline. 17 years. No drama, no write-ups. I trained their new hires, solved their messes, sacrificed birthdays, vacations, sleep, and on a random Monday morning, they handed me a folder and told me I no longer fit their vision. No handshake, no thanks, just we're moving in a different direction. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I walked out, drove home, and sat in a room that suddenly felt too quiet. I wasn't angry, I was hollow. But here's the part they didn't expect. That silence, it wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of something they never saw coming. Because being fired didn't ruin me. It introduced me to the man they never let me be. Welcome back to the channel. If you've ever poured your soul into a job, only to be left with a cold goodbye, this one's for you. I used to wake up at 5:15 every morning. No alarm, just habit. The kind you build over years of showing up before you're asked. My boots were always by the door. Coffee at exactly 5:30. I'd sit in silence, take one slow sip, then head out before the sun finished rising. I lived in a modest home on a quiet street. Same neighbors for over a decade. The kind that wave without talking. My wife made breakfast on Saturdays. I fixed whatever needed fixing. Pipes, gutters, her mood after a long week. One in college, one almost out the door. They didn't say much, but I caught the gratitude in how they lingered at the door before leaving. I provided. That was my role. I never needed applause, just peace. And I had it. Peace, that is. In my own quiet way. Not flashy, not loud. But I had earned the life we lived. I worked at that company like it was mine. Never missed a day unless someone else needed the hours. They trusted me, or at least I thought they did. I wasn't trying to climb a ladder anymore. I just wanted to leave something solid behind, something with my name on it, something my kids could be proud of. But when you've been standing still too long, you don't always notice the ground shifting beneath you, until it's gone. My wife, Lena, she always knew how to keep things steady. Not loud with affection, but you'd feel it in the way she folded my shirts or waited up when I worked late. She'd pack my lunch. Same note inside every Monday. Come home safe. You matter more than the money. I never told her, but I kept every single one in my drawer at work. My son Caleb, quiet kid, sharp mind. He once asked me, "Dad, are you happy at work or just used to it?" I laughed it off back then. Said something like, "Same thing after this many years." But it stuck. The way he looked at me, like he already knew something I hadn't admitted. Naomi, my youngest, always said I smelled like sawdust and engine oil. She meant it as a compliment. She said it smelled like home. She'd wait for me on the porch some nights, just to ask how my day went, back when she still thought dads were indestructible. Then there was Vince, my manager for the last 3 years. Used to pat me on the back and call me Old Reliable, always with a laugh. I used to take pride in that nickname, thought it meant something. But one day the laugh didn't come. The pat felt rehearsed. I should have paid attention to how the newer folks looked at me, like I was part of the wall, not someone to learn from, just someone to eventually move around. My buddy Rich from the floor team, we used to grab lunch on Fridays. Same booth, same jokes. But after his promotion the invites slowed, then stopped. He started using words like metrics and alignment. I didn't recognize him anymore. It's funny, you spend years thinking you're woven into people's lives. Then one strange silence, one unanswered message, and you realize you were more of a thread they could snip without unraveling much. I didn't stay at that job for the money. Not really. It was decent, but not enough to explain 17 years of my life. I stayed because of what it stood for. Stability. A roof that never leaked. Dinner that never skipped. Kids who never had to wonder if they were safe. That job wasn't just work. It was the engine behind every little thing I promised my family. But more than anything, it was Lena's respect. That woman stood by me when we had nothing but second-hand furniture and gas money to split. I never wanted her to carry the kind of stress I saw my mother carry. That weight in the eyes when bills pile up. I swore she'd never have to feel that. And Caleb, my boy, he watches me closer than he lets on. He once saw me patch a tire in the rain and said, "You always find a way, Dad." I didn't react much then, but I held on to that sentence like scripture, because that's what mattered to me. Being the man they could count on. Not flashy, just solid. And I'll admit it, part of it was for my father too. He died before I ever made something of myself. And even now, I find myself doing things the way he did. Tools organized just right. Lawn trimmed sharp, saying yes ma'am like it still meant something. I wanted him to be proud, wherever he is. So no, it wasn't the job title that mattered. It was what that job allowed me to give. Who it let me be. The silent provider, the steady hand, the man who never wavered. And that's why what happened next hit deeper than just a paycheck. They didn't just fire me. They fractured the foundation I built everything on. It didn't happen all at once. Betrayal rarely does. It starts quiet, like a room getting colder, 1 degree at a time. I started noticing Vince, my manager, stop making eye contact during morning rounds. The usual "good to see you, man" turned into a nod. Then nothing. Meetings I used to be part of happened without me. I'd hear whispers of decisions I was once helping make. Already done. I asked about one project I'd built from the ground up. Vince said, "We've decided to go in a different direction." Like I wasn't standing right there. My overtime hours got cut without warning. Then my tasks got reassigned. Little by little, they peeled my name off the work I took pride in. And folks I'd trained, people who used to ask for help, they started avoiding my desk, eyes flicking past me like I'd already left. One of them even said, "They're looking for fresh energy," said it like I should understand. Then came the glitch in payroll, a missing bonus I was promised. I asked HR, they said it had been reevaluated. I said, was I not supposed to be told? The woman just looked at her screen and said nothing. Even Lena noticed. She asked me why I was coming home earlier, why I looked tired in a different way. I brushed it off, told her things were just shifting, but deep down I felt it. I wasn't losing a job. I was being erased, slowly, carefully, like someone trying to take my fingerprints off the place without leaving a trace. You don't always recognize betrayal when it's dressed in routine. Sometimes it wears your schedule, walks like your paycheck, until one day, it stops knocking. I remember when the plant had that electrical fire, back in my 7th year. They were talking shutdown. Everyone was panicking, clocking out early, phones out calling family. I stayed. No fanfare, no second thought. I helped get the crew out safe, then worked all night with the electrician to rewire the backup generator. Didn't leave till the sun came up. Vince, same guy who wouldn't look me in the eye now. He shook my hand back then and said, "You saved us, man." I remember fixing machines in the rain, giving up my bonus so the new hire could afford his daughter's medication, showing up after my father's funeral because we were short-staffed. Lena wasn't happy about that one. She had set out his favorite shirt for me to wear to the repast. I folded it back into the drawer and grabbed my uniform instead. I told myself I was doing it for the team, for the company, for us. She didn't argue. She just looked at me a long time and said, "Make sure they remember what you gave up for them." I guess she was right. They remembered what I gave. They just never thought it meant I'd expect anything in return. That's what cuts the deepest. Not the firing, the forgetting. As if none of it happened. As if all the years I gave were just convenient. I once believed loyalty was a kind of armor, that it protected you, but all it really did was make me an easy target. It was a Monday. Same coffee, same parking spot, same beat-up locker with my name taped on the side. But when I swiped my badge that morning, it blinked red. I thought it was a glitch. Swiped again. Red again. The security guard, new guy, didn't know me, stepped forward and said, "Sir, you've been deactivated." Like I was a hotel key. I said, "There must be a mistake. I've been here 17 years. He didn't blink, just picked up the phone and said, "We've got one stuck at entry 2. Like I was furniture. Vince didn't even come down. He sent someone else, Julia, from HR. She walked me into a conference room, like we were about to plan a company picnic. There was a folder on the table, my name on it. She called it a transition packet. Said the company was shifting its structure, downsizing, refocusing resources. She said it like she was reading off a teleprompter. 17 years, and they ended it with a 3-page document, a free coffee voucher, and a list of websites to explore new opportunities. She smiled the whole time, like it was a favor. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just stared at the chair across from me, the one I used to sit in during team briefings. The one they'd already given to someone else. The folder weighed almost nothing, but carrying it out of that building felt like dragging a coffin. They didn't yell. They didn't curse. They just smiled and erased me. I sat in my truck, keys still in the ignition, engine humming like the world hadn't just fallen apart. The folder was on the passenger seat, sealed, still warm from the HR printer. I didn't open it. I just stared at it, like it might rewrite itself if I waited long enough. I'd parked in the same spot for 127 days, give or take. Watched the sun rise behind that building more times than I could count. But that morning, the light looked different, colder. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. Same hands that kept machines running. Held my daughter when she was born. Built shelves Lena never asked for but always thanked me for. And now those same hands didn't know where to go next. 17 years. No scandal. No write-up. Not even a warning. Just out. I thought about driving to my son's school, just to see him between classes, to see something that still made sense. But what would I say? I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was invisible, like someone had hit delete on my whole name, but forgot to tell me. I didn't drive home right away. I just sat there, letting the engine run, because turning it off felt too final. You want to know what made it cut deeper? It wasn't just the years I gave. It was everything I gave up inside those years, that nobody ever saw. Back in year 4, the company was going under after a contract fell through. Payroll was frozen. People were jumping ship. I took half pay for 2 months quietly, just so the rest of my crew could keep feeding their families. Never told Lena. Just picked up side jobs to make it work. Year 8, one of the younger guys, Marcus, messed up bad. Flipped the wrong switch. Stalled a $250,000 production line. Vince was ready to fire him. I took the blame. Said I was supervising, even though I wasn't. That kid still works there. Got promoted 2 years ago. And don't even get me started on Rich, my so-called friend. Couldn't manage a schedule to save his life. I built him a spreadsheet system from scratch. Stayed late 3 nights straight training him on it. That system, they still use it today. His name's on the patent. Mine never made it past the office door. I gave them loyalty, even when life got ugly. When Lena's sister was dying, and I couldn't get time off, I covered shifts for other people to stay in their good graces. Didn't matter that I was the one at the funeral with red-rimmed eyes and a vibrating work phone in my lap. I protected them, defended them. I said, "We're like family here." That's the line I used, right before they slipped the papers across the table. I wasn't just blindsided. I was sacrificed. And the worst part? I volunteered for it every time. It had been 3 weeks since the folder. Lena was still kind, still patient, but there was a new edge in her voice when she asked what I planned to do next. She never used to ask things twice. Now, it was every morning. And Caleb, my boy, I overheard him on the phone one night. "Yeah, Dad's just home now. He's figuring stuff out. I think he's kinda lost." I wasn't mad at him. He wasn't wrong, but hearing me, summed up like that, hit like a shovel to the chest. I walked into the garage that afternoon, thinking I'd fix the shelf that kept leaning. Something simple, but when I opened the toolbox, my name label was gone. 17 years, I kept that box at work. They gave it back, but someone had peeled my name off, left the sticky residue and all. I don't know why, but that broke something in me. Not the folder, not the badge, a damn toolbox that I bought, that I labeled, that I loaned out more times than I can count. It was like the universe was whispering, "You're not needed anymore." I stood in the garage, lights off, just staring at that box, and something inside me snapped. Not in a loud, flip the table kind of way, in a quiet, clear kind of way, like glass cracking under pressure. They hadn't just taken my job, they'd taken the part of me that built the job, and for the first time, I wanted it back. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't raise my voice, but I stopped waiting for someone to come apologize. The day after the toolbox, I woke up before the alarm, sat at the kitchen table while the house was still dark, and opened my old leather notebook. I started writing, not about what they did to me, but about everything I knew how to do, systems I'd built, problems I'd solved, patterns I could see before others even noticed. Something was wrong. I didn't call old coworkers. I didn't vent online. I called my bank. I checked my pension account. I reviewed every severance clause, line by line like it was scripture. I opened a new folder on my computer, named it Build Something. No fanfare, just a white screen and a blinking cursor. I didn't tell Lena, not yet. She was tired of words. I didn't tell my son. He was still watching me from the corner of his eyes. I just moved in silence, because rage makes noise, but power, real power, is quiet when it builds. I remembered every process I'd improved, every person I'd trained, every moment they looked past me that I made things work anyway. They thought firing me ended the story, but I was just sharpening the pen. I didn't announce anything, not to my wife, not to my son, not even to myself, out loud, but I started moving. I opened a new bank account, in a different name, transferred a portion of my severance, just enough. No alerts, no flags, no questions. I stopped auto-paying for things I wasn't using anymore. Subscriptions for a life I no longer lived. Cut off anything that didn't feed where I was going. Tone sharpened slightly, not angry, just exact. I pulled out the dusty flash drive where I kept all my old workshop templates, the ones I created after hours but never got credit for. Polished them, branded them, registered a domain, bought a business license. Quietly, I kept a log of every call, every email, every time someone from that company tried to rewrite history. I didn't argue. I documented time, date, tone, words they thought I'd forget. I watched them from the outside now. Promotions being handed out, my old programs being used. No credit, no mention. I smiled, let them think I was fading, let them talk in break rooms, and assume I was lost. Because while they were building meetings, I was building leverage, and when the time came, they'd hear everything I'd been too quiet to say. There were nights I'd sit in the garage, laptop open, bank tabs blinking, legal files scattered across the bench, and I'd wonder, what am I even doing? I wasn't sleeping much. I was snapping at people without meaning to. Lena would ask how my day was, and I'd just nod. Caleb stopped leaving the porch light on for me. Maybe I should have let it go. Maybe I should have walked away and started fresh. Maybe dignity wasn't in the rebuild. Maybe it was in the release. There's a version of me that would have said, let them have it. They took the job, fine. Let them keep the credit, the chair, the system with my fingerprints still on it. But then I'd remember the look in that HR woman's eyes when she handed me that folder, like I was a number on a spreadsheet, not a man who carried them through 17 winters. I wasn't doing this out of bitterness. I was doing it because silence shouldn't mean surrender. Because if I didn't protect my name, no one else would. So yeah, maybe I should have just walked away. But then again, maybe this is who I was always meant to become. You know what happens when people think you're out of the picture? They get sloppy. It was a video. Someone tagged me by accident. Company awards banquet. Big night. Speeches. Applause. And there he was, Vince, standing on that stage, smiling wide. He was talking about the new efficiency systems they'd implemented, the ones I built, word for word, slide for slide. I watched him hold up a plaque with his name on it. Say, we're moving into a new era now. Fresh minds, fresh ideas. That was the mistake, saying it out loud, in public, pretending history started when I left. Now the narrator straightens emotionally. But what he didn't know was that I had registered that system in my name 6 weeks earlier. Copyrighted, certified, time-stamped, everything. The lawyers didn't need much. Just the footage, just the date, just the silence before the applause. I didn't sue for millions. I didn't drag their name through the mud. I just made sure that plaque came down. They thought forgetting me made me disappear. All it did was make space for me to return, on my terms. They didn't see it coming. That's the thing about storms that don't make noise. They still flood the house. It was a Thursday morning, just like the one they handed me that folder. Only this time, I was the one delivering paper. The email went out at 8:17 a.m. sharp. Legal notice, cease and desist. Full documentation of the system they'd claimed as theirs. Names, dates, and copies of the contracts they ignored. The silence that followed was better than applause, because I didn't just protect what I built. I proved they never understood it to begin with. I filed a formal claim, not for revenge, for correction, for memory. A week later I drove past the building, saw them scraping the branding off the doors, my designs taken down, because they didn't have the right to use what they never respected. And me? I didn't send a gloating text, didn't show up uninvited, didn't raise my voice. I just changed the locks. On the part of my life they thought they still had access to. Justice doesn't have to be loud. It just has to arrive. No one called me. Not Vince. Not Rich. Not Julia from HR. And definitely not Marcus, the kid I took the fall for. But I heard things. Whispers through mutual friends. He handled it well. Didn't think he had that in him. Nobody saw it coming. That last one always gets me. They didn't see it coming, because they never saw me at all. Lena said someone from the company messaged her on Facebook, apologizing for how things went down. She didn't respond. She just showed me the message and said, they don't deserve a reply. Shift to the moment that mattered most. But it was Caleb's face that got me. We were eating dinner, nothing fancy. He looked up and said, so you really did all that without saying a word? I nodded. He smiled, didn't say another thing. Let the silence linger. Then we want to know what victory feels like. It's not courtrooms. It's not money. It's the look in their eyes when they realize you were never weak. You were just patient. And now, they know exactly what I look like when I've won. I'm not the man who used to rush to work before sunrise. Not the guy who skipped dinner to fix someone else's mistake. Not the worker who thought loyalty was the same as safety. Beat. Let the weight hang. I don't measure my worth in clock-ins or annual reviews anymore. I don't ask permission to rest. I don't wait to be noticed. There's peace now, but not the kind that comes from comfort. It's the kind that comes after a long fight when you know you did it the right way, even if nobody cheered. I walk slower now, think longer before I speak, and there are days I still look at my hands, wondering how they went from building someone else's dream to finally carving out mine. I've lost things, time I'll never get back. People who faded the moment I stopped being useful. But what I've gained, that's mine. Not borrowed, not owed, mine. So no, I'm not the same. Not softer, not colder, just clearer. And that clarity cost me 17 years. But it gave me the rest of my life. There was this brown work jacket, canvas, faded at the seams. Lena bought it for me the year I got promoted. Said you're always cold in the mornings. Let this one carry you through. And it did. For 17 years. I wore it to every shift, every winter morning, every broken machine. It had grease on the cuffs, a tear near the wrist I never stitched up. It smelled like sawdust, sweat, and routine. People used to joke, he's never without that thing. They weren't wrong. That jacket was mine, a second skin. It knew everything, even the things I never said out loud. The day they let me go, I was wearing it. When they handed me that folder, I remember looking down at the sleeves. I hadn't even zipped it up yet. For weeks I couldn't look at it. Hung it in the back of the closet. Tried to give it away once, but couldn't let go. Wasn't about the fabric. It was what it had seen. But the day I filed that paperwork, the day I stood up for myself without raising my voice, I put it back on. Same jacket, same weight on the shoulders. But this time, I wore it walking forward, not looking back. But I thought it was over. I thought I had the final move. Until last week, when a letter showed up. No return address. Just one line inside. You weren't the only one they underestimated. So maybe this story isn't finished after all. Sometimes I still ask myself, was I wrong? Was I wrong to stay quiet and plan instead of forgive and forget? Was I wrong to collect the receipts instead of burn the bridge and walk? I wasn't perfect. I waited too long to speak up. I let people walk over lines I never should have let them cross. But when I finally stood up, when I took back what was mine, I did it clean. I did it calmly. I did it without ruining anyone else's life. Still, there's a part of me that wonders, does protecting your peace make you bitter, or does it mean you finally chose yourself? I didn't set out to hurt anyone, but I wasn't about to be buried quietly either. I'll let you decide if I was wrong. But I'll tell you this, I sleep just fine. They thought I'd do nothing. They thought silence meant surrender, that being quiet meant being weak, that if they moved fast enough, I'd just disappear. Softer now, but firmer. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I didn't chase. Final beat. Chilling. Poetic. Clean. I just waited until they handed me the rope and tied the knot themselves. Short pause. Then quietly, without drama, and I simply pulled. I didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't warn them. I just waited. Waited while they smiled at me like they'd won. Waited while they passed my work off as their own. Waited while they held their heads a little too high. They thought silence meant I had nothing left, that I'd fold, fade, forget. But silence is where I do my best thinking. They kept talking, kept moving, kept believing the storm had passed. And the whole time, they were walking toward the edge, on their own. I didn't push, didn't pull, didn't even touch the rope. They tied the knot. I just waited until they handed it to me. I walked past the building, not to go inside, not to cause a scene, just to see if it still made me feel small. It didn't. The lights were on, same parking lot, same faded sign near the front gate, but it felt smaller, like the weight I used to carry in there didn't belong to me anymore. 12 years ago, I signed my first contract with them. No lawyer, no questions, just a handshake and a hope. Thought I'd retire there. 17 weeks ago, I stood in my garage, staring at the box with my name scratched off. I hadn't said a word in days. I just stood there, let the quiet answer everything. 3 days ago, I got a message from someone I used to supervise. Said he'd left too. Said he saw what they did to me and decided he wouldn't wait for it to happen to him. Said you showed me how to walk away. Funny. Time moves, but I remember everything. I don't need revenge stories to remind me of who I am. I have timestamps, receipts, moments no one clapped for, but I survived anyway. That's my legacy, not the years I gave them, but the man I became when they finally let me go. Would you have fought back, or would you have walked away? Would you have gathered proof in silence, or screamed into a room that had already stopped listening? What would you do if the people you trained were the first to act like they didn't know your name? If the system you built was handed off to someone who never lifted a finger to create it? What would you do if the people you fed with your own hands turned around and watched you starve, just to see if you'd beg? Would you stay quiet like I did? Would you trust that the truth doesn't always need an audience? Would you wait for justice, or would you chase it? I'm not here to tell you what's right. I'm just here to ask what you'd do. Tell me in the comments. Tell you in the comments. Because one day you'll have your own folder, your own silence, your own moment, when you're asked to disappear. The question is, will you?